Hey, welcome to React Roundup, the podcast where we keep you updated on all things React related. This show is produced by Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs is where we create top end devs who get top end pay and recognition while working on interesting problems and making meaningful community contributions. And Envoy, which provides client-friendly remote design and software development services. So clients only pay after the tasks are delivered and approved by the client. In today's episode, we will talk about the popularity of React it's basically about an article of a very special guest that I'm going to mention in a second that wrote an article titled Why React Won the Front-End Race. My name is Lucas Paganini, your host in the podcast, and joining me in today's episode is Peter Osa.
Hello, everyone.
And our guest for this episode, which is also the person that wrote the article we're talking about, Pranto Dota, which is a React Native developer with more than 4 years of React experience.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pranto, and I'll be talking about React today.
Awesome. All right. So, Pranto, let's just jump right into it. So, first, I thought it was really funny reading your article because you actually wrote it in a very sarcastic way, bringing facts, but also bringing them in a kind of sarcastic way. Do you mind telling us a bit about why React became so popular, how it was able to, as you said, win the front-end race, and also what are some of the drawbacks from it that we just learned to live with it, unfortunately?
Well, first of all, React is actually a library, right? I mean, yeah. So that's one of the things that I actually mentioned in the blog post, that people will always remind you that, it's a library. And one of the things that I really don't like about, not actually React, actually the React developers, I see a lot of buzz around it that basically says, yes, React is the king, React is the best thing in the whole wide world, and things like that, which is actually not true. And the point is, React actually won the race. There is no denying that fact. But if you sit on it like, this is the best thing, no, it's not. The reason it's not is because there's like 50 other frameworks that, I don't know, the conversation that we are having right now, maybe in the meantime there's been a JavaScript framework. I mean, there's a very good possibility that actually happened. So if you think that React is like the only thing in the whole universe with the JavaScript with the JavaScript framework that you can use to build apps or web applications, you're wrong. And that's exactly the point of this post. So basically, what I wanted, or what I tried to do here, is that I tried to tell everyone that React actually won, but it's not the best thing in the world. So you have other options, and you have a lot of options actually. And there are situations and times when you need to explore them. You need to try to understand that what makes React great and what makes it sometimes actually really painful to work with. And I have actually I would say like a basic understanding of other JavaScript frameworks like Vue or Angular. I have worked fairly with them. Like I'm not like an expert, but I worked with them and I understand how they work, and also React Native. But one of the things that I really saw people do is that, you should always learn one thing, and you should just do this always, and it's always like, React is the best, and learn this, and then you don't need to do anything anything at all. Like you can always do React. I mean, there's actually truth to that, because right now Windows is actually using a lot of React and React Native, and there are a lot of big companies that actually use React. So yeah, maybe there's truth to that, but there are a lot of things that it's just, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like, how would I say this? It's bloaty actually. It's really. And one of the things that I would say about React is that it actually delivers. It actually sets. It actually does what it sets out to do, and it does with flying colors. And one of the things that I actually really admire about React is that since its inception, React has been developing its ecosystem like every other month, year, or I don't know, like every day. And one of the things that made this possible is the Facebook, the Meta team at Facebook, or whatever they're called these days. Then the point is, the people behind React are extremely talented, and they always deliver. Like they do deliver. And to answer your questions about the drawbacks, one of the things I don't really like about React is that when you have like a really big project, like I don't know, a lot of components maybe, then it becomes really hard to upgrade something. Or like let's say you need to change a specific thing, and you need to bring in all these other things into this. And when you have one single component, then you can update it easily. But when you have one component that depends on like 50 other components, that it becomes really really hard to just update one single function. Like let's say you have just one state, and that state is being used by five other components behind them, and let's say you need to update it in somehow. You need to update that somehow, and when you do that, there are like a lot of steps inside, and there are a lot of things inside that just re-renders for no reason. I mean, there's just because they depend on one single thing. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can prevent this, and let's just say React is not the most performant framework, I'd say, and there are a lot of better ways to do this. But for what it's worth, React is actually good for what it does. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. Like the fact that if you look at the actual scope of React, it really does um, what it's supposed to do. The problem is really the fact that a lot of people look at React and expect it to fix a lot of other problems in your application. When I say fix, it's more like it's not really fix because it's not like it's originally broken. It's more like providing solutions, right? If you compare, for example, to Angular, which is a much more much larger framework, it does so much more. Like internationalization, for example, there is no baked in solution in React. Like this is the way that you should handle internationalization. So if you want to support multiple languages, you got to decide which library, which solution you're going to use along with React to fix this problem. If you want to like do something more fancy to control your forms, then there are multiple different ways for you to do that, and you have to choose which one you want. So it's simple. I guess that, at least to me, what makes more people get drawn into React is the fact that because it is seen as a single library, it's also simpler to explain because the scope of what it does is smaller, right? You can read the entire React docs in maybe like 2 3 hours if you just sit through it and read. It's really straight to the point, and it's because it has a very specific set of problems that it solves. Whereas if you look into other frameworks, Vue.js, Solid, Angular, etc., their documentations are going to be more extensive, but that's also a reflection of the amount of things that they solve. And if you think that you're going to be free from those other problems, then you're just cheating on yourself because those problems eventually are going to come. And then you're going to, like, you never just use React, right? Like, you're always using React and a mix of a bunch of other libraries put together so that you actually have a framework. So I think that this ended up making React more interesting because it was easier to get started with it, but it also creates a lot of problems later because it is easy to learn because there are a lot of things that it does not address, and you will eventually have to address those things somehow. So yeah, at least to me, I would bet that that was one of the biggest reasons.
Well, first of all, I think that the fact that React does not provide like all of these things together. Uh, at first, I thought like, why do I need? I mean, first framework that I ever used was Vue. So when I first came from Vue to React, and when I was first doing some routing, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. It was during lockdown. Okay, so when I was first doing that, I realized that there are a lot of things that I have to do manually. Like I have to write a lot of boilerplate and other stuff. Even with Redux, Redux also has a lot of boilerplate, and that was actually really painful. But what I came to realize is that this is actually a good thing, and the reason I'm saying it's actually a good thing, I mean the fact that React doesn't provide anything, it's actually a good thing because when you do this, when you leave this to other people, then you get like a lot of cool stuff. Like we have React router, we have dense stack router, we have reach router, we have a lot of other routers, and they're doing a specific thing. I mean, in some sense, this is actually better for the ecosystem. Even with React Native, like the fact that React doesn't provide a lot of things out of the box, it just makes a lot of sense for other people to come in and just use the bare bone, the minimal thing that we have with React Native, and make it into something that we want to make. Let's say with Flutter. Okay, so with Flutter, have you ever worked with Flutter? Just curious.
I have not. It is something that I have been very curious about because I was exploring some of the hybrid development tools lately, and honestly, we were trying to do stuff with capacitor, and it was just so painful that we were like, okay, so no, that's not gonna happen. We're gonna have to either choose between React Native or Flutter because capacitor is just too painful. But we didn't get enough time to do the proper research on Flutter yet. So I would be very curious to also hear your thoughts on it, knowing that you're coming from this web dev perspective.
So the point I was trying to make with Flutter is that they have a lot of things baked in the framework. Okay, like a lot. You, you don't need a library. Like that's how much things there are in the Flutter ecosystem, and that actually creates a problem. You know what problem? The problem it creates is that there are like, I mean, most of the apps that you see are built with Flutter. You can see them, you can look at them, you can look at these apps and tell, yeah, that this app is made with Flutter. I mean, trust me, I can. Just show me some pictures. I will tell you if they're made with Flutter. It's that easy. I mean, it's actually like, how would I say this? The thing, Flutter is actually really easy, and that's the problem. So when everyone tries to do the same thing with the same line of code, it just every app looks the same way. Like, I mean, have you noticed those? those GitHub README apps that people show, and they all look the same. That's because they are made with Flutter. And when someone shows you an app that was built with React Native, you don't have this. That's because React Native doesn't provide a specific set of rules to you. It just provides a view, and then you write your own thing. But with Flutter, you have, let's say, a container, and then you have a border radius and everything. And when you do this, everything looks the same. But it's not the same with React Native, and I think that's actually a good thing. That's one of the things actually React got it right. Even with Angular and Vue, they have their own router. Okay, so they don't, like, there's literally no other router in Angular or Vue. I don't know if Vue has any other router than Vue router. Sorry, the baked in one. I'm not sure though, but I know that Angular doesn't have one. So I mean, there are other things with Angular that does have things like file-based routing and stuff. I forgot the framework name, but the point I'm trying to make here is that the fact that React didn't provide anything with its original library, it made other people make their own thing. So we got a lot of stuff. We got Next.js, we got like Remix and Tanstack, and I think this is actually a good idea, and I think React actually got it right. And to think that at first I thought, like, why would I need to install another library just for routing? I mean, I really thought that.
Okay, that does make sense in terms of Flutter. I think that Flutter also has a like I think we need to separate things a bit because I think there's like this broader concept of something that is more opinionated and solves more problems versus something that is smaller in scope and leaves you with more options to do whatever you want. So like React is something that is more scoped and then lets you make choices afterwards. And Flutter and Angular are more opinionated and have their own way of doing things. But I think there's also like, I think we need to separate the idea from the actual examples because Flutter and Angular, they are both very opinionated and they have their own set of ways of how to do things. But um, you don't have like the problems that you were mentioning with Flutter are not things that I believe are applicable for Angular. And I think part of that as well is because Flutter is also built on a programming language that is not very used outside of Flutter, right? Like who else uses Dart besides Flutter developers? Like I don't know anyone else that uses Dart for anything besides people that code with Flutter. But on the other hand, Angular is built to run on the web, and thus it is just JavaScript at the end. Well, it's actually TypeScript, but you get what I mean. At the end, it's just JavaScript. So you can still leverage the entire ecosystem of the web. You just have to sometimes add a few wrappers um, so that it just works inside Angular, right? But you can still leverage all the web, which I think is a big difference from Flutter, right? Like I would say that there's a lot of things that React developers, Vue developers, Angular developers, Solid developers, whatever. I think there's a lot that we can all share with because it's just vanilla JavaScript, vanilla web development. So anything that is vanilla web development, anyone can use in any framework. The thing with Flutter specifically is that there there isn't much that you leverage besides the things that were specifically built for Flutter. Um, would you say that that's true as well? Like, does that make sense, or do you disagree with this view? Because you have more knowledge of Flutter, so I might be wrong.
No, actually, you're 100% right, and I think that one of the areas that this actually really shines. I'll give you a proper example. So I was working with uh, how do I say, a project that has to be done in like a week. Okay, so it was like 4 or 5 months ago, and it had to be done like instantly. I didn't have time to test it properly. I didn't have to have enough time uh, to make it like look good and stuff. Like it was just an app. It had just one specific functionality. Like it had um, a stopwatch, and it would work like a stopwatch. Okay, and it would record it would record the values, the laps, and some other stuff. Uh, and it was not actually that much complicated, but if I had to do that in React Native, I don't think I could have done that in a week, but I did it with Flutter in a week. That's because Flutter actually provides you with a lot of things that you can just work with, right? So I didn't need to to update a button. I just wanted a button that looks like a button. Okay, I just needed to get stuff done, and Flutter is actually really perfect for that. And Flutter actually have like a lot of functionality under the hood. It also provides you with that, but when you are working with, let's say, an upper level thing, you don't need to go down. You don't want to go down the down level, because the down level is generally more complex. Let's say I was doing one small thing the other day. I was just trying to make the border, border uh, in a, how do I say this, a straight line, instead of just radius. So I learned that you can't just normally do that in Flutter. You need to create a canvas, then you need to custom paint this. So that was, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah. So when the thing that you work, it doesn't work, you need to go a lot of different ways. You need to hack things a bit to make everything perfect. You want to, but when you need to get stuff done, Flutter is actually really perfect for that. And that's, I think, you made a really good point there, because when it comes to Angular or Vue or React, let's say we have an animation library, like uh, what should I say? Framer doesn't work with it doesn't work with Vue or Angular. It only works with React. So let's say any frame animation library that actually works with all of them, because it internally uses JavaScript, or a library like D3JS or Swepper or anything like that, that actually works with all Vue, Angular, and React framework, because internally it's just JavaScript. It just works, right? So even though you don't have a specific library for Angular, you have one for React, then you can, I mean, if that specific library wasn't built for React, like it was built for JavaScript, then you can actually use it with JavaScript, with Angular or Vue, not just React. But most of the time, I actually saw a lot of libraries focus on React first, then move on to the other frameworks, which is actually a pretty common thing. But yeah, you made a good point there about Flutter not being as, as consistent like the JavaScript ecosystem. But one thing I'd say though, the amount of packages that Dart has or Flutter has is actually pretty, I'd say, I don't know, it's just unbelievable. Like, where did this much package come from? I mean, it's actually kind of weird, to be honest. Like, it's really big. The ecosystem is actually really big. There are a lot of people uh, developing libraries, and I don't see them on anywhere. Like, I don't see them on YouTube. I don't see them on any podcast. I don't see them on like YouTube comments. There are a lot of people on YouTube comments saying yes, React is the best and React Native is this and that. But I don't see a lot of people talking about Flutter. But when I go to the package store, the Dart, I think pub.dev. So when I go there, I see a lot of packages, which is like, where did this come from? And one other thing I'd like to say, this doesn't mean that the fact that React has a lot of packages doesn't mean they always work. I will give you a proper example. So last year I was working with a project with NFC. Do you have any idea with NFC? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So with NFC, you need the native support, right? You can't do anything with JavaScript there.
Oh, sorry. Just to make this also clear to the audience, we're talking about NFC, not NFT. So it's not about crypto stuff. It's about
No, no.
being able to like magnetically transmit information, like a credit card that has an NFC signal, and they can capture that and grab the data. That's it.
Yes, that's NFC. It's actually, I think, like near field communication or something like that. Yeah. So basically, it's a technology that lets you do payments and other stuff. So the thing that we were doing is that we were scanning some cards, some NFC cards, and we are writing some data on it, and then we are retrieving data, and we're doing some other stuff internally. Now, so I at first I thought this would, I mean, I'm a React Native developer, okay? So I first tried to use React Native. And when I was using React Native, there was this package called NFC Manager that you use for NFC with React Native. And I used it, and I don't know, it just felt so much buggy, like, I mean, the read worked fine, but when it came to write, I couldn't write a lot of cards simultaneously. It just hangs for a bit and throws weird errors. I didn't like get the end of it. I just couldn't make it work, you know. But when I came to Flutter for help, I mean, it was out of desperation because I couldn't get it working properly with React Native, so I just came to Flutter for that. So when I came to Flutter, I found out that there was this package that is weirdly also called NFC Manager. Yeah, I know that's actually weird. Both of the package have the same name. So when I used that Flutter package called NFC Manager, it worked like a charm. I mean, it's actually really, really good. Everything with reading, writing, and it just worked. Also, it has a specific features called Stream, which is it's actually really good. Like, this is one of the best features in my opinion in Dart, which is Stream. The fact that you can listen to things, and I mean, you could say that JavaScript also has that, or like any other languages also have that, but trust me, this is actually better than most other languages. So yeah, that actually properly worked out for me, even though I think React Native has a bigger ecosystem. So when it came to how do I say this, an uncertain level of thing, actually Flutter worked and React Native didn't. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just skill issue from my side. Like, I didn't know how to get it working, but I didn't have to do anything with Flutter. It just worked. Okay, it didn't with React Native. That's exactly my point.
Yeah, that is a big advantage indeed. Like depending on how fast you need the thing to be done, and also how much custom design do you want with it. Think that's a good thing to consider. Peter, do you have any questions? Anything you want to add or mention thus far?
Okay, yeah, I do. So I would say questions, but I think so. So I think my first question is as regards probably I'll be on the defense of React. So let me just be on the defense at the point in the sense that now there are usually situations where like people have actually mentioned that the React packages are not working, or rather React kind of promotes certain kind of design or patterns or coding conventions that doesn't really scale, doesn't really make sense in a lot of opinions. So, but then I will usually ask the question that at this point, like, um, do you think it's actually like, do you think it's React is to blame, or maybe the ones using React as the framework? Because yeah, there are probably um many usually like I think I usually use this example of the use effect. There's this use effect abuse, and I went to React. Their React docs actually has a post from Dan Abramov on why you shouldn't use React use effects so much. But yet, you see a lot of people kind of using it, or let me just say abusing it. So at this point, will you kind of blame the framework, or the framework is this, the framework is this, or actually rather than maybe, or the people doing it, or the people building or using this framework, are they using it properly? Are they following the rules? Are they following the conventions of it? Are they also trying to kind of integrate like maybe actual like design patterns, like maybe the popular one, Key, Shiagni, and the rest to building React applications? So, what do you think, Panther?
Okay, so first of all, I think that both of this both of these design patterns or paradigms or like whatever you want to call it, I think they have their place. First of all, because there are times when you need to do something really quickly, and I think that that's where Flutter actually shines. You don't need to do a lot of stuff to just build an app. But to answer your question, if whether the React is to blame here, actually I don't think so. I mean, honestly, they could have done a little better with the recommendation and stuff. Like I'm actually going back to Flutter again, but Flutter actually provides some other packages that works with Flutter. I mean, the Flutter team actually provides some other packages like Go Router and Provider and some other packages. These are also like extra packages. You have to manually install them, but Flutter team actually maintains them and builds them. But you don't see this in React or React Native for that matter, because they don't provide like any extra stuff. The I mean, to quote Don Abramov, he actually said the only package that React provides is the React. So yes, he actually said that once. So one of the things that I do think that we need to think about when making a decision like this is to when what suits you. Okay, so let's say you are making a really big application, like you don't know what to expect, you don't have a proper understanding of what's going to happen, then yeah, I don't know, if you do something opinionated like Flutter, changing things, it's actually really hard. But when it comes to React Native, it's actually pretty easy. It's actually easier than Flutter. That's what I found. And one of the things is that about use effect, you said, well, let's just say use effect actually uh, creates more problems than it actually solves. That's, I don't know, that's actually probably a bold statement. But when you have, when one of the things that I do want to mention here is that when you use more than like 3 or 4 use effect, yeah, you should probably rename that function to use food gun that time, because that's exactly what your users did. When you have multiple use effect in your code base, you just, I mean, anything could go wrong at that time, like anything. This is just what happens. I mean, I don't know how to make this better. Like even with the React 19 stuff, with their shipping, like they have some, they have a compiler now, so I guess they're not a free library anymore. But even with that, I don't see any improvement with use effect, and I don't know what improvement could they provide. I don't see a proper solution to this problem at all. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. I actually get that as well. But then, one thing about React is that React itself is not opinionated, right? So it's, I think it's, and that's kind of like a blessing and a curse depending on the requirements, or your requirements, or anyone's requirements, right? So there are people who kind of like kind of maybe a streamlined pattern, and like yeah, they do want to follow, or they do want a like a framework, something that kind of have everything together, and then kind of follows a specific pattern. I think okay, for my experience, like, I think something like Angular now, right? Angular follows like a very good like OOP convention, and many design systems you follow. Yeah, and that so many people will feel that yeah, those also have like their demerits, in the sense that they feel there's a learning curve, there's a higher learning curve. Maybe okay, the ease of kind of finishing, or like doing something quickly. Some people feel maybe you have to learn a lot to kind of use frameworks that actually use like this pattern. But then React kind of gives you like a framework, more just more like a canvas. Oh, this is just what you need to do, and you could build anything you want based on your imagination. And yeah, that has actually created its own demerits, in the sense that of what many people usually see as like kind of, I won't really say it's like an abuse of the framework, where or the library where so many people use that to kind of, they don't follow like actual patterns and conventions, plus and they kind of abuse the use of libraries, which we actually mentioned, because there are certain, like okay, there are certain things that people feel that oh, should be in library, but you could actually do it with just like JavaScript. It's a JavaScript inclined thing, right? So I don't know. So the why I'm explaining this is that now in this kind of, with this kind of concepts now, right? It's like it's React itself to blame, rather than then, but rather how people adopt it. It's actually the problem, because I think that's the main thing I'm trying to kind of push out. Like okay, yeah, everything has its merits and demerits, but I think it's based on how you use it, or how the developers use it. Yeah. So what do you say? Yeah, what do you say?
Well, first of all, the fact that React is unopinionated means that you can do anything with React or React Native for that matter. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I will answer your question on the blame. But first, I don't know. You know, React Native doesn't even have a select component. Like you need a library to select something, or you need to create like select, form select. When you click on something, a drop down appears. React doesn't have anything like that. React Native, sorry, React Native doesn't have anything like that. You need to create your own component to make that happen, or just install a third party library. I mean, why? It's just a simple thing. I don't know. Just also, I don't think React is to blame here. I mean, they were trying to do one thing and they did it properly. And the fact that the React actually doesn't provide anything, it's actually useful in a lot of cases. Let's say, let's talk about the company, the Meta. So they have a lot of applications, right? They have a really big applications called Facebook, you know. So they have a lot of components there. So how would you just push one thing? Like how would you push a specific set of design or patterns on like a million components? I mean, can you even do that? Like how would you even do that? Like all of these have like different uh, people Facebook actually have a lot of subsections to like developers.facebook.com, careers.facebook.com, and shops.facebook. They have a lot of things like this. So all of these are different applications. So even if you try to do something like this, how do you even like propose a system that actually works with all of this? Like, I mean, if you're doing something like uh, pushing something like ESLint, like a linting, something like that, you can do that. But how do you push design? I mean, I don't know, honestly. I don't know. It just maybe I don't. Honestly don't know how you even could do that, even if you try to. But so one of the things that I would like to say here is that Flutter is actually backed by Google, and Google actually pushes their own design, which is material design, and each and every app that you create with Flutter actually comes with a material design. I mean, you can change that. You have like other internal design systems with Cupertino and other stuff for iOS. So they look different. You know, you can do that, but mostly like I don't know, like 90% of the time, people actually use the default material app. So they're pushing something, and I think that both of these approaches actually works, and that both of them have their place in this, and we just have to decide when to use which. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's yeah, I think that works actually. I think the answer is kind of great. So I think it's yes, it depends on the developers and actually React is not really major in the sense that the devs are the ones that kind of architects or build the application using React. So they get to decide how want to whatever like what to use and how to do it and how to use it. Yeah. So like Lucas, do you have any observation?
Yeah, I do have one last thing before we wrap up, which is out of all that, we didn't even talked about or explored the alternative of just using native mobile development, just doing native Android, native iOS. And I just wanted your opinion on that, Pananto, because I think this definitely uh, generates a lot of polemic, right? Like a lot of people have different opinions about that. But I think there are people that believe that we should prefer native apps and people that think we should prefer hybrid apps. I'm not even talking about Flutter versus React Native. I'm just talking about hybrid versus native on mobile. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Do you think that there's still space and reasons to go with native development in 2024, or let's just say 2025, because we're already ending 2024, right? So in 2025, do you think there's still reasons to go with native iOS and Android development, or this is the past and we should definitely go with hybrid independently of it being Flutter or React Native?
Actually, there's been an interesting project called Kotlin Multi-Platform. Have you heard about it?
No, sorry, I couldn't understand. How? What's the name?
Kotlin Multi-Platform
Oh,
from
Kotlin
JetBrains.
project. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually Kotlin multi-platform. So basically, it's like React. Sorry, it's like React Native for Flutter, but you write code with Kotlin. And the thing with this is that the Android developers, the existing Android developers, already knows. Okay, they already know Kotlin. That they are working with Kotlin every day. They're working with Compose. Compose is the system where you write components in with native Android development. Normal component. You write them with Compose. So let's say you are an Android developer, right? And you can develop apps with just Kotlin, and uh, you will write it once, and everything else just works in an iOS device too. And I think that's actually pretty good. Like in Android, you get the existing thing, like the exact same thing, the exact same experience like a native Android app. But on iOS, you actually get the uh, the the exact same app. But the problem with this is that on iOS, it's not actually native, but you do have the capacity to write native code. So to answer your question, whether we should use native or
or a cross-platform framework, I would say again, one of the things that one of the things that I found out is that if your project uh, grows to a certain point, like let's say you have a project that you've been working with like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, there will come a time when you need to work something. You need to work with the native libraries or the native system. Like both of these platforms, like Flutter and React Native, they both provide stuff like modules, and Flutter has something called channels that you can communicate with the native layer. Like you can execute Kotlin code for Android and Swift code in iOS. Both of these framework actually have that. But my point is, there will come a time when if your project is big enough, that's important, by the way. If your project is big enough, there will come a time when you need to work something with native. So either you like it or not, you just have to use native. Okay, so I mean, at this with this, you could argue that why not build the app with the native thing? Well, the thing here is that you are not going to develop any app as fast as you can with cross-platform frameworks like React Native or Flutter if you're doing it with uh, native native Android or native iOS. You're never going to be able to do that. So that's because both of these languages, like Kotlin and Swift, they're actually they actually have a lot of similarities, but they're different. Their whole system is different. Android works in a certain way, iOS works in another way. I mean, if you ever worked with like specific native permissions, like Android doesn't care about most of the permissions, but when you're working with iOS, you need to set specific things in specific order to just keep everything working. So it's really painful at times. And if you're not using something like Flutter or React Native, it's really hard to do that. But at the same time, there will come a time when you do need to use the native features. So yeah, I mean, again, that actually depends on what you're trying to do. If you like you said, the hybrid architecture is actually pretty good, I think, because you have both the native options, and the cross-platform applications, and you're doing specific stuff. That's actually what Facebook does. Facebook, Messenger, and like other Instagram and other apps like this, they're hybrid apps. They have both the React Native system and some native code inside, and that makes them them the hybrid apps. And yeah, so to answer your question properly, I would say think about what you're doing. If you think your project is like anything, like I, a few moments ago I was talking about NFC. If your project is something like this that needs to communicate with the native layer, then I think you're actually better off writing something like uh, uh, writing the app logic totally from the scratch in native, even though it will take some time. It will actually take more time, but in the end, it will make your app more accessible. And also, one of the things which is actually really important is performance. You're never gonna get the performance from cross-platform apps like you would get from the native apps. Like, I mean, how could you, right? It's not possible. But that being said, Flutter is actually pretty fast. I mean, React Native isn't, but Flutter is. Flutter is actually pretty fast. So I mean, who's gonna uh, see the difference between milliseconds, right? Let's say something is happening in 200 millisecond and 300 millisecond. Who's gonna notice the 100 millisecond difference? No one. That's so. So, yeah, I think that we should decide what what you're trying to do and then make a decision. Also, there are other things that actually a lot easy in Flutter or React Native than in doing in natively. you know, like sending notifications. Yeah, that kind of sucks in native side. I have worked with, I have knowledge about developing some things internally, and yeah, I would rather do it in Flutter. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because uh, Firebase is also backed by Google, so maybe that's why they work together to make it simpler. Yeah, that could be a reason, but I don't know. I just found it more easy in in Flutter than in native side. Again, that that could be my skill issue, but yeah, that's my opinion. If you have something really big, something really complex, then yeah, you're probably good at native. But if you don't, just if you don't need that all that native stuff, you just working with a specific thing. So recently I worked with an app. I developed an app actually for our HR department. And if you think about the HR department, they're never gonna need any native features, right? I mean, what are they gonna do? Scan us? So yeah, they're never gonna need those features. So Flutter is probably really good for them. I mean, I could just do some fancy animation and stuff. So yeah, that's my point. You need to think about what you're trying to do and then choose what suits you the best.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right, dude. Thank you so much. This has been a really valuable episode. And yeah, it was a pleasure to have you. Let's do some quick promos and then we can wrap this up. On my end, I am going to just promote the companies that produce this show. So, Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs has a lot of other podcasts as well. So, if you're interested in some other frameworks, some other technologies, definitely check out some of the other podcasts from Top End Devs. If you just want to know more about web development in general, there's also JavaScript Jabber, which is a podcast just about JavaScript and web development in general, also made by Top and Devs. And if you or your company is looking for more web developers to augment your staff and just develop features quicker, do check out unvoid.com. This is unvoid.com and reach out. They may have exactly what you're looking for. So, yeah, these are going to be my promos for today. Peter, how about you? Want to go next?
Okay, yeah, for today, I don't have like any promo. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. How about you, Pronto? Anything specific you'd like to promote?
Yeah. So I'm Pranto. I'm a React Native developer. If you need any help, just reach out. And uh, if you like to work on something, then you can reach out to me on my email and my website, pranta.dev. So yeah, thanks.
All right. And for those that want to reach out to Pronto, just so you know, his website is pronto.dev. This is PRANTA .dev. So I know that the way that it pronunciates is pronto, but it's not an O at the end, it's an A. So make sure that I'm sending for those of you that are listening to this on a podcast player that has a comment section like YouTube or Facebook, whatever, then there's going to be a link to Pronto's website there. But if you're just listening to us, then it is PRANTA.dev, and you can reach out to Pronto if you're looking for help to build something. Yeah, awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, thank you for your time. Nice meeting you. And yeah, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sticking up until the end of the show. And I will see you on the next one.